My name is Pam Williams, and I am a nutritionist, a photographer, and a writer. And I am on a quest to know and understand and be in relationship with God and follow Jesus Christ in everything that He has me to do. I started a blog starting in January, and it's called We Ask These Things. And one of the reasons why I wanted to start this blog was because I found out that there are a lot of women who are trying to get more out of life, and they run into these roadblocks, and sometimes they get frustrated, sometimes they're angry, and I find that a lot of them are isolated. So I'm thinking collectively, if we can highlight a particular issue such as pain and highlight that, and then collectively come together and pray. So the purpose of the blog is to discuss, look at stories, examples, how did Jesus handle pain, what is the purpose of pain, and then, which is a really broad subject, but we do that, and then have a prayer at the end that everyone can pray collectively. So that's the whole premise of it. I just started it in January, and I'm really excited about it.
Sounds good.
Well, actually, I went on a journey. I kind of grew up in the church with one foot in and one foot out. And then I reached sort of like a crossroad that says, you can't do both. You either inside or outside. What do you choose? And I said, well, I can't imagine life apart from God. And I knew what I was taught was a lot of traditions. And when I went back to the traditions, I couldn't find satisfaction, sort of like that little itch you have in your heart to fill. And so I went on this journey. I bought books. I read books cover to cover. I wrote, so I wouldn't just read. I would then write about what I was reading. And I began to teach myself a lot of things. And then about 8 or 10 years ago, I had an inkling. It says, if you're a Christian, you should read the Bible through. And I was like, oh, that's a pretty good idea. And I said, I'm going to read it like I've never read the Bible before, but pretend. And so every day I would read, and then I would write. At the end of the year, I did that for 365 days. At the end, I had over 1,500 pages of notes. And when I concluded, I folded my arms and I said, how is it that I have been exposed to the Bible for so long and not know its contents like I now know? And apologetics was a part of the journey, because at some point you're going to ask the question, where did the Bible come from? Who wrote it? Why is it valid? There are other books out there. Why not include these books? And apologetics gives you the details that you need so that I can say with confidence, this book has enough evidence for me to take what it says as valuable and shape my life, but not only shape my life, to reach out to others and minister to others. So apologetics is very much an important part of the journey. Well, for example, as I told you, I like photography at the beginning. So sometimes I go out on nature trails. I like to photograph birds. And bird photographers are very friendly. So you see someone with a very long lens. I don't have a long lens, but you see someone with a very long lens. And you say, hello, how are you? Did you find any good birds today? Where to go to shoot and stuff like that. And I remember this one particular guy who said to me, he asked me why did I like photographing the birds. And I told him, because growing up in New York City, you only see pigeons and sparrows, maybe. To see the design in each wing that I photographed just blew me away. So you look at the raptors with broad wings so that they can dive. You look at the vultures with wider wings so they can soar. You look at the terns that can dive, and every wing is different. And he said to me, well, I'm atheist. So I asked him, I said, you're atheist? He's like, yes. And I said, have you searched the world over to find out if there is a God or there is no God? Because atheists say that there's absolutely no God. He goes, no, well, no, not really. I don't know if there's a God. So I said, so technically, you're not atheist, you're agnostic. And he goes, well, yes. And I said, well, if there's a possibility that God does exist, and I explained the cosmological argument to him, and I said, you should be on a journey, because if there is a God out there, don't you think you ought to know who he is? And he says, well, when you put it like that, I guess I should. So these are the kinds of conversations that I may have with people. I do have, I call it a mission of one. And if I meet a female, lady, a woman, whatever, and I'll say, hey, let's go grab a cup of coffee, my treat, and just say, how are you? No, really, tell me, how are you? And all sorts of things unfold. I can tell you story after story after story of women who I've reached out to. I have no problem buying a Bible, buying a book, buying a CD, whatever it is that comes to my heart that I can give to a person to help them on their journey. And I realize that it's not my job to convict. The Holy Spirit does that. And it's not necessarily my job to lead person from point A to point Z or wherever they have to go through to get to God. That's not my job either, because some people plant, some people water, some people put the seed down. So everybody plays a part. So my goal in my heart of hearts is to start my day off for an audience of one and ask God to show me how to serve, and let whatever I do to be an act of worship towards him. And many times I have the opportunity to talk to people about concepts in apologetics, and it just comes in conversation over and over and over. You know, there's that old, I don't know if you know that old example about the starfish on the beach. There were millions of starved fishes, and there was one little boy who was picking up one and throwing it in an ocean. And then a gentleman came and asked him, why are you throwing these starfish back into the ocean? It doesn't matter. Look how many there are. And the little boy said to him, to that starfish, it made a difference. And that's my attitude towards the people that I meet. If I can give you one word or one phrase packed with the Holy Spirit at work in somebody's heart, to that person, it has made a difference. And that's it. That's all I can do, and that's how I choose to live. Apologetics sounds like a huge subject. And there is a range. In fact, I had a conversation with a young lady that I invited here today. And I told her apologetics, it involves philosophy. And sometimes you hear the word philosophy and you go, oh, my brain. I can't handle it, right? But it has elementary components. It has complex components. Complex components are made up of simple ones. So if you walk into the area of apologetics, you start with that one component and break it down until you understand it. And then you can add another component and another. There's so many wonderful writers. There's so many wonderful stories that explain the concepts associated with apologetics, and just being able to be ready to give an answer, give the reason to why you believe, are the steps that you take, and don't become intimidated. You have the Holy Spirit who guides you into all truth, and the Bible teaches that in the book of John. And rather than allowing yourself to be intimidated, you pray and ask God to give you the wisdom and ask him to direct you to a text, to a book, and with an open heart towards God, he'll direct you. And one day you'll end up with the tools in your hands and you're like, wow, when did that happen? And sometimes that's just the way God works. He gives you those tools.